So, namaste and welcome to Satsang today, this morning here. So, today, as always, my aim with any Satsang or any teaching is to try to make it as simple as possible to to stop resisting what is and to begin to allow what is in terms of manifestation to flow more. And really what we're talking about there is awakening. Same thing. Another definition of awakening could be to totally allow everything to be as it is. And that doesn't mean that we agree with everything as it is, or even like, or even want everything to be as it is right now, but just accepting that this is how it is right now, in this moment. And most of our struggles, most of our suffering as a human being comes from the idea that our mind really, really believes, but is nonetheless completely untrue, that by pushing against what has already manifested, by resisting it with everything we have, that we can find some kind of peace, and also that we can make it change. By rejecting what's already shown up for us, we will find peace and that we'll get what we want. This is the major assumption that our mind functions under, and so tends to resist everything because that's what it does. And it may not be a deep or even obvious resistance to what is. It could be as simple as a constant commentary on what's going on. By thinking about something, we can very subtly resist it, or sometimes very overtly resist it. So I really wanted to look at this because this is the root of everything that's been asked of me this week. Well, my whole teaching has been about this, but specifically this week it's come up. And what is surrender, and how do we allow what is to be, and what happens when we do? Because if this premise isn't true, that by resisting what already is, we'll get what we want. If the opposite is true, by accepting how things are right now, being conscious to them, present to them. Again, that doesn't mean liking, accepting, or validating. But by accepting, recognizing, being conscious to what is, then I can no longer be in resistance to it, and it has to change. It absolutely has to. So we could be talking about here what's going on inside my own body, what's going on inside my own head, what's going on in my relationships, in my finances, in my career, everything. Everything, it really boils down to how much am I pushing against what is. And one of the major ways that we learn to not resist what is, or we practice surrender. Surrender has this kind of, had this kind of negative connotation for a lot of my spiritual pathway of failure. It was associated inside me as some kind of failure. But I had to turn that around eventually, came to see that it's exactly the opposite to that. Surrender to me became a beautiful way of stopping fighting and allowing life to go where it was already trying to go, with a deeper and deeper recognition that life is working for me and with me because I am life. There's nothing separate to me that could go some other way to what I want. And that the only reason I've experienced that again and again and again is because of this deep-seated idea that I am a separate being, separate to everything and everyone else. That's completely untrue. And then that distorts my reality, my perception of reality. And then because I don't like the distorted perception, I push against it in every way I can, unknowingly, of course. So meditation for me was the first place that I actually became conscious of just how much I was resisting what is. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what happened when I started meditating, because I really learned some valuable lessons about surrender. And I don't want you to think for a second that I somehow knew how to do that, how to let go, how to stop fighting what is. I had no clue how to stop. Even once I realized, having, done enough spiritual practice, that I was attending enough satsangs, read enough books, watched enough YouTube videos, after realizing that I really was resisting what is, doesn't mean that we automatically know how to stop. And most of us do what I did, which was to redouble my efforts spiritually to stop resisting. So I tried really, 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 really hard for a very long time to not push against anything. And of course, that was in itself a really intense pushing against what is. So I want to try to make it simple by telling you what happened. And you may get a giggle out of this as well, but if you do, great. So the very first time that I sat down to meditate, I was, I can't remember how old I was now, but I was in a really dark and desperate place, really in the depths of a deep depression, and adrift in my life. My whole life had turned upside down, and I didn't know why I was even here or what the point was in continuing. And when all else failed, I turned to meditation because I was really embarrassed. I didn't want to do it at all. I thought it was something really weird that, weird people do. I guess I'm weird now too, but in desperation, I sat down to do this meditation, and I set the timer on my phone for 20 minutes and figured that, once I'd given this a try, I could cross it off my list of things that would help and be done with it. And for that 20 minutes, I experienced the most profound bliss, feelings of ecstasy, bliss, a deep, deep peace. I lost all awareness of my surroundings. I was just in the deepest state I have ever experienced, deeper than I even knew was possible. And the very next thing I knew, the alarm was going off, the timer was going off on my phone. And I had to kind of reevaluate. Of course, immediately my desire for more of that became the most important thing in my life. I want that, and I want that all the time. I couldn't live any other way from that point forward. So I sat down again to meditate that evening, actually. I'd done this in the morning. I thought, right, I'm going to have some more of that to finish my day. And you probably guess what's coming here. I sat down, I got all comfy, and my mind just went absolutely insane, like crazy insane, just constant barrage of thoughts, negative emotions, memories, things I'd rather forget, everything. And it was the longest 20 minutes of my existence, my physical existence at least. It seemed to go on forever. And I swear at some point the timer went backwards. Actually, more time was going on to the clock. And I was really, really upset. I was distraught because I thought that I'd done something wrong to not experience what I had earlier in that morning. And for the next 3, 4, maybe 5 months, I had the exact same experience. Every time I sat to meditate, there was this intense, raging insanity that was my mind. It's like my mind was just going, hey, here's all the stuff I need you to look at right now. Here's everything I think about life and the world and you and everything. So if you had that experience, whether the bliss came first or not, I don't know for you, but it was very disheartening and I was ready to give up meditation completely. But luckily, something inside was curious as to why I'd had that different experience the first time. Why did I have that intense silence, peace, and bliss and everything the first time I meditated, and why haven't I been able to have it since? And unbeknown to myself, I was learning about surrender. Life was teaching me, because I wasn't a willing student at all. Didn't want it, didn't want this lesson. And eventually, after much searching, I realized the only thing that was different the first time I meditated to the second and every other time was I had no idea what was going to happen the first time. I had no expectations of even peace, of anything changing, anything working. Didn't know what bliss was, didn't know it was possible to feel even deep peace, let alone stillness, bliss, joy, ecstasy, all of that. So I began to become clear over the next 3 to 6 months that the more expectations I had about what was going to happen in meditation, the noisier my meditation would be and the less fulfilling. So like everyone else, probably I tried really, really hard to have no expectations about meditation and what I was going to experience. And for the next 3, 4, 5 months, I came to see that that didn't work either. That absolutely didn't work, because I tasted something and I wanted it and I had to have it and I was unable to live any other way. Something had expanded in me, what I knew was possible for me. And I couldn't go back. I couldn't fit into my life the day before I meditated for the first time. Just wasn't possible. So I began to search around for another way to get rid of my expectations. How do I do that? Again, not really realizing that this is also known as surrender, or allowing what is to be, or whatever we want to call it, being with this moment. And one day I had, this is about a year, at least a year after this first meditation, maybe more. I had the worst meditation ever. I couldn't even sit still. I couldn't sit down. I spent the whole 20 minutes pacing the floor. My body was just felt tense and tight. I think I was sobbing at the time, and I was just absolutely distraught and feeling furthest away from peace I've ever felt. Because ironically, before I'd felt it, I didn't know it was possible. Therefore, I didn't really, really want it. And at some point, again, the timer was set for 20 minutes. I think I got to about 18 minutes. I just sat down, I laid down on the bed actually, and gave up trying. I thought, I'm going to sit here for the next 2 minutes. I'm going to just give up trying. This isn't working. And of course, the next thing I know, the timer's been going off for around 10 minutes. So gone way past the 20 minutes and right up to 30 minutes. And I was in this deep place again and didn't know consciously how I got there. So I tried eventually to look at why this had occurred again. What happened when I gave up trying? And when I looked at this, it was just an allowance of everything that is. If my meditation looks like this today, me pacing the floor and sobbing, then this is what it is. And I'm not going to say, for this moment at least, that it should be anything other than this. And it just completely hit me that this is how this piece comes. So my mind can be completely doing its tsunami thing that it used to do. My emotions can be in a real state. My body can feel tense and tight and all of the rest of it. And whatever's going on in my life at that point, if I just stop trying to change it for that moment that we call meditation, there's a deep peace that does deepen into bliss and joy and love and everything else that comes with that. So by giving up, I'd accidentally learned surrender. And every time I sat to meditate after that, I just, okay, what is, whatever happens in the next 20 minutes is fine with me. And there were various states of peace, deeper and deeper, sometimes not quite so deep. Sometimes mine was noisier. Sometimes it was completely silent. Whatever happened in that time, my only goal, and I use that word very loosely, was to just let it happen. And we do a lot of this at retreat. We do a lot of just sitting, silent sitting, where we just let whatever wants to happen, happen, learning to resist less and less. And as time went by, I began to apply this in the rest of my life too. I wanted this peace and I wanted it everywhere I went. I wanted it a constant, effortless unending companion to my daily life. And as I began to apply this and sort of experience peace in little segments of the rest of my day at first, then more and more, and then all the time, even when there was some big emotion coming up, there was still peace. There might not have been bliss or joy or love in that moment, at least not being felt in the body, but there was always peace. It's never stopped, never left. And I began to apply this to everywhere in my life. And then something wonderful, as if that it wasn't wonderful enough, something even more amazing began to happen, and people around me began to feel it too, began to notice that something was happening to them, that they weren't quite so able to feel scared in those moments, or unworthy, or in shame or fear, any of those things. And things began to change in my life. Little by little, my life turned itself. It took a couple of years to get it all sorted. And there's still little tiny things I'm working on. But things began to appear the way I want them to be, rather than the opposite, what I don't want. So telling you this because this is probably everybody's story in some way, isn't it? I mean, you may not have had that intense bliss the first time. That was just a gift, I think, for myself to push me to continue, because if that hadn't have happened, I would have walked away from meditation that very first day and said it doesn't work. And probably wouldn't be here now. The depression was going where depression goes. So, but we can all apply this understanding to our own life right now. Two simple facts: that by having expectations of this moment, I'm going to disturb myself and achieve nothing else. My mind, my body, my emotions will feel the result. And secondly, by pushing against what already has shown up, I stop what has already shown up changing into what I want it to be. Manifestation, and also known as your life, is always in constant change and flux, and it's always changing into more and more of what you do want. But we resist that because we resist the way it looks right now. Right now, it doesn't look the way we want. So we push against, I don't want this. So it has to stay where we're resisting it. It won't change and flow. You could say that life is always trying to give us more and better, but we've got so good at pushing against what is, that what is can't expand. We're holding it down like this, and through no fault of our own. We've all only been taught this, haven't we? This is what all of humanity does, in fact. And when I don't like something or want something to change, I push against it. But it's like somebody giving you a finished painting and saying, by criticizing the painting, you can change it. You know, it might not be the picture that you want, but criticizing it, wishing it would not be how it is not going to change the actual painting, is it? But by saying, okay, this and this and this I don't like about it, but I accept this is the way it's been done this time, it can then be, we can get another blank canvas to create something different. So again, just to say this again, because it's really important, accepting how things are right now for us, for the world, the situation in the world, everything that we don't like about what's going on right now in the world, in our own lives and everyone else's. Accepting it does not mean liking it or agreeing with it or validating it. It means accepting that this is how it already is, and that by pushing against, it will only stay the same. And I don't want you to take this as a personal blame. Oh my goodness, because I did this too. I've been resisting what is, all the cruelty and the things I see in the world that I don't want, the things I see in myself that I don't want. I've been holding them in place and I shouldn't have done that. And I went into self-blame for quite some time. But this I, who sees what it doesn't want, what it doesn't like, is the infinite I. It's everywhere. You are everywhere. And as you begin to accept what is can change. And it's the only way it's going to change. So whether we're talking about experiencing peace in our meditation, experiencing peace in our whole life, getting what we want for others around us, for those we care about and love, for humanity as a whole, for creation as a whole, the whole planet, the universe, it's the same, boils down to the same simple thing. And I'm going to say it one more time, just for repetition, because it took me only about 100,000 times to really get this. So, and only because we have learned that the opposite is true so many times. We've been taught, our mind thinks, really believes that if we push against what is, I will get what I want. So I'm not talking about, when I say push against what is and accepting what is, if you see something going on in the world that you don't like, it doesn't mean you don't speak out about it or do something about it. I'm not saying that at all. Those actions and words and speech can be much more effective, even from a place of acceptance of what is. It means I'm not going to argue with the way reality has already shown up for me, because it's pointless, because all it does is depletes my resources. And when I don't do that, I feel peace. And then I can move forward with my life and helping other beings. So I'm not promoting inactivity. Surrender is not inactivity. In fact, in my experience, it's been quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. And those actions and things that I've done and said have been much more effective, been heard, been listened to, been acted upon. When they come from a place of pushing against what is, my words are ineffective and weak, powerless. They only have the energy of a thought instead of having the energy of reality. So just separating in our minds, in our consciousness, what accepting means. Let's put like, validate, or want to continue over here, and acceptance over here. Looking at a picture and saying, this is what it is, this is acceptance. So looking at our lives right now, the state of our awakening, state of our mind, state of our relationships. This is how it is right now. And I can't change that, is acceptance. Surrender, love, whatever word you want to put on it. And from that place, it will all begin to change. Everything about your life will be turned the right way up again. And then more and more and more of what you want will begin to show up. It starts from your own peace. It is not selfish to feel peace when others are suffering, or even joy and love. The only way we can bring peace to others is by bringing peace into our own heart first. Again, we've had it 180 that I don't and shouldn't feel peace when others are suffering, but peace is infectious. Peace seeps out of you and into everyone else. And when you're not resisting what is, everyone else around you, even temporarily while they're with you, will find it hard to resist what is too. They might experience contentment or peace for the very first time. And what a gift to give those around you. Knowing that by celebrating your own peace, and eventually that deepens into love and joy in not a very long space of time at all. And by applying this where we can, bit by bit each day, where am I resisting what is? And where can I let go of doing that today? A little bit more than yesterday. Understanding that I don't like what I don't like because I'm here to bring some change in the world. I'm here to, I want to see a different way. We all want to see a different way for humanity to function as a species. Of course, it's right to want what you want, but we're going to go about getting it in a smarter way, more direct way. In fact, in a way that actually works and works every single time, no exceptions. So I hope that you've got something out of that. And I hope you feel that peace and getting what you want is a bit closer than you might have imagined. Just most of us reach that point of acceptance of what is by, like it was for me, desperation, jealousy of what the peace that others had, blazing, raging envy. And I would like to say it was some beautiful spiritual moment where I just decided I'm going to quit resisting, but life helped me, shoved me to that place where it was the only option. I couldn't go anywhere else. So if you're there right now, I totally know how you feel. And from that place, as terrible as it is, there's only one way forward, and that is letting go. It's happening. It's happened already. You wouldn't be listening to something like this if it hadn't already started. And we're only saying these words to speed that process up so we can consciously come to recognize what it actually is that when we do it makes the difference. What is it that actually brings peace right now? Can I look at my life, such as it is, whatever state it's in, the first time say, okay, this is just where I'm starting from. Can I look at my awakening and say, this is just where I'm starting from in this moment. It doesn't mean I've been doing it wrong. My life, my awakening, my relationships, everything are a reflection of my own resistance to what is. And as I stop resisting what is already, because I can't change what has already shown up. The clay has been molded, it's been baked, glazed, painted already, it's done. But in the very next moment, right now, something is being sculpted. And the major factor in that, whether it looks like what I want or don't want, whether I feel the way I want to feel or I don't, is how much I'm pushing against this moment. What does that mean in actuality, in practicality? Might feel some peace, contentment here while we're talking like this. And after we close this meeting and we go about the rest of our day, you might find yourself doing something that you'd rather not do, feeling something that you'd rather not feel, saying something that you'd rather not say, doing something that your mind says should not be happening. You might judge yourself that you're not as awakened as you want to be. You might not be feeling as much peace, love, joy, or bliss as you want to be. And your attitude in that moment then is key. Here's how we apply this. Okay, this is where I'm at right now. No judgment, no blame. That's how we resist what is. I'm not feeling peace and I'd like to. End of story. No analysis, commentary, self-blame, criticism, or judgment as to why. And if that happens with the mind, no agreeing with it. Listening to our mind's opinion has not really brought us peace anyway. So right there in that moment, how am I going to handle this moment? What am I doing with this moment right now? And as I move through the rest of my day, life is going to show me where I tend to really resist what is. Not because of this satsang, it's kind of doing that all the time, isn't it? And inviting us gently to let go, to stop trying to change what is. Again, just for clarity and repetition, you cannot change what's already shown up, but you can change what's about to show up in terms of inner feelings of peace and outer manifestations. Just that one simple thing for me was life-changing. And it really was awakening in a nutshell for me. Day by day, applying this more and more and seeing where life was giving me an opportunity to stop resisting what is. Simply asking, how am I resisting this person, this situation, this emotion, this event? And we can tell when we're resisting because our body will tell us, our emotions will tell us, our mind will tell us. So practicing this in your meditation, that's why all the meditations that we're teaching here are really ways to stop fighting reality. So when I listen to the silence or rest in the stillness, or be aware of awareness, or notice the beingness, when I'm conscious of my consciousness, it cannot be pushing against what is. And immediately peace comes, or at least contentment, at least not suffering at first. So what it was for me at first, not suffering, and then contentment, and then peace. One of the hardest challenges as a teacher to get across is trying to get someone to stay with a simple thing long enough consistently that it takes over their entire life. Because our mind wants to make something complex, especially awakening, doesn't it? It wants to say that people who have reached a deep level of peace have done something that we can't do. But what if it is this one thing, and this one thing adhered to more and more, as much as I can today, and the next day even more, a little bit more, day by day, accumulating. Suddenly I'll realize I'm not resisting anything, anywhere. And when life shows me something that I have a tendency to push against, I can let go of that gently without any blame. And it begins to transform. So here's a challenge. Are you willing to, for the next 30 days, you know, me and my 30-day challenges, or however long you want to, if that seems like a long time, then just try today. Are you willing to notice where you're pushing against what is? Are you willing to let go of blaming yourself for doing that? That's the major way we fuel the mind. So my life looks like it looks like right now. I don't have to change my life or my emotions or anything before I'm awakened. I just need to stop pushing against how it is right now. When you start this, your life won't look like the abundance and the peace and the joy that awakened beings tend to experience. It'll probably look the opposite, like mine did. But that's not a good reason to not start. Celebrating day by day the little places where you begin to feel better, feel more peaceful. Celebrating where your life begins to change. Someone's nicer to you today than they were yesterday. Tiny little things. But celebrating them until they're just overwhelmingly coming at you. Abundance in here of every way we'd want to feel. And abundance in every way it can show up in your outer world, because they are the same. And the really cool thing about this is, as you do this, you are helping every other human being to feel a little bit happier, because you're not really a separate being. There's only one of us. This is you talking to yourself about yourself. So little by little, stumbling into surrender. We never arrive at surrender gracefully. We'd like to think we do, but it just didn't happen that way for me. And I hope I've got that across to you today. I tripped over it on my, despite my best resistance, life taught me how to let go. Okay, I will read a couple of questions that have been emailed in, and If you do have anything you want to ask or share, you can raise your hand here on Zoom, and I'll go to you, and I'll read 2 questions here. Dear Helen, I understand the non-dual teaching. I am happier and it is easier for me to handle negative situations since I listen to you and practice your meditations. I remind myself to look at the space, listen to silence, and stay still, often during the day. I could go on and on about all the wonderful feelings I have, but this is not my point. When I look at the world now, I see it like a witness without attachment. I can look at phenomena and not identify with them. In fact, this is the reason I'm now so relaxed and don't mind as much about whatever is going on in life in general. If I could do something about all the insanity that's going on in this world, like the war in Ukraine, I would. But since I can't, I refuse to suffer from it. I believe I also have a lot less ego. This is a big burden off my shoulders. Oh boy, yes, it is, isn't it? However, I really don't understand the idea that we are not separated. What does that feel like? How can we understand that? Actually, I like to be separated. I don't want to be a part of any violence. If possible, could you please explain what it means and how to get there? Thank you. Okay, so wonderful work so far. You're feeling more and more peace and all of that, and that's great. And I want to answer your question, I want to define the difference between separation and individuality. So we can come to deeply realize that we're not separate to anything or anyone else. Our essence is formlessness. Our forms seem to be separated, our bodies, our thoughts, our emotions, all of that. But in truth, not even those, because they're also made of the same essence. But for sake of this explanation, the formlessness that we are, the consciousness, the awareness is not separate. There's only one awareness showing up as everything and everyone. As I come to realize that, I'll feel this deep, deep peace. That's why I felt that deep bliss and peace in my first meditation, because for that 20 minutes, I wasn't holding together my ideas about how I'm separate to everyone and everything else. I'm constantly thinking about other beings, other things, thinking about myself. I'm artificially creating a division that isn't really there. Even easier than that, by agreeing with the thoughts I have, I'm creating a separation that isn't really there. So separation means lots of beings, but there's only one being, and that feels extraordinarily peaceful, joyful, comes with, I could spend a whole half hour telling you about how that feels. You've begun to experience it already. It's not something outside of you. You're already experiencing this, whether you realize it or not. It's the only thing that's changing. What you've described in the first part of your question, your email, is oneness beginning to hit home. I'm not resisting so many things. The moment I stop resisting phenomena, most of all myself as a phenomenon, as I think I'm a separate being, then I begin to feel more peace anyway, deeper sense of joy and wonder and awe. Our individuality, though, is not lost just because we recognize that we're not separate. I've said it before, but it's worth saying again. Individuality does not mean separate. Indivi means not divisible, from the Latin, duality. Indivi, duality. Not divisible, two-ness. So looking like two, but not really. Not really two, not really two. Our individuality is how the one being that's everywhere is expressing itself in a unique way that's never been done before and never will be done again, as you. Your mind, your body, relationships, your desires, your goals, your aspirations, everything that makes you you is not lost in that. And part of that is what you want for this world, for yourself, for others, for the world. So we can realize our oneness with these beings, our non-separation from these beings that are doing these horrible things to each other. And again, that doesn't mean we agree with it. Doesn't mean we condone it. Doesn't mean we want it to continue. Of course, it will be quite the opposite. The more love emerges, the more peace emerges, the more we'll want all beings to feel that way, to feel the way that we're feeling increasingly. So separation is not the same as individuality. We can realize that we're not separate and still retain our individuality will function and flourish much better without these false ideas that we're separate in the way, confusing our mind and our emotions. And from that place, we'll be extraordinarily, in whichever way it shows up for us, inspired to create this change in the species as a whole, human beings on the planet. So nobody here would want to be a part of any violence, of course, because we're already at a point where we're valuing love and truth and compassion and peace and all of those things, non-violence. But to actually recognize that we're not separate, this is just another way I'm showing up as these beings doing these things to other human beings. That we're showing up as the best and the worst of what humanity has to offer. That we've showed up as Gandhi, as Buddha, as Socrates, everyone that we could ever revere and want to be like, all of our heroes, spiritual and otherwise, everybody that we would like to see change in the world, everybody that's doing something to themselves or someone else or a lot of other people that we don't like. That is all us, the one being showing up. That's the truth. And doesn't mean we have to blame ourselves for that. Our essence is one. How that essence is showing up as that human being, we don't agree with or condone, but we can accept that is how that being is showing up right now. To say that they should not be how they are right now is the mind's insanity. To say that we would like them to be different in the next moment is clarity and wisdom and can actually come into fruition. So I hope that's helped to kind of clear that up. It was very confusing for me, this, when I was looking at this. I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, just read one more and then we'll see. If you want to share something, please do raise your hand. This one says, when I'm talking to myself, as in reminding myself of truths, etc., who is it that is talking? Not ego, is it? Awareness is watching the speaker. Yeah, you could say that, well, there isn't really an ego, a separate self. It's just, it seems to be, what we're really calling ego is a collection of all the way that we resist reality. All the ways I'm resisting everything, myself, the way I feel myself to be, the way I see others, everything. Collectively, that could be called our egoic sense of self. Again, not the same as our individuality. So when we're interested in truth and compassion and love, and when we're doing spiritual practice, it is the infinite self, the one being, reminding itself, and has always been. You could say that the one being gets deluded and imagines itself to be separate, then talks to itself as a separate being for a very long time, talks to other beings that it thinks are other outside of it, as if they're separate beings too, for a very long time. And then it begins to realize that that isn't the truth and begins to remind itself consciously through satsang, through practice, through meditation, all of that. And it begins to recognize that consciously, but it is nonetheless the self, capital S, the one being, all the time showing up that way. Because it is no, and you can tell, same voice, but when that voice is speaking in delusion, it doesn't feel powerful. When it is speaking in truth inside you, it feels very strong and very powerful, doesn't it? So hope that helps you get your head around that. But again, it was very confusing for me. Okay, we'll go to Margot whenever you're ready.
Hey, Helen, thank you so much for all that you do for us, because I've definitely seen a change. But one of the things, so yes, that's just such appreciation. But anyway, what you were saying this morning really resonated about how you felt, so good and the bliss, and that's all you wanted, and then it was gone. And so that's been happening lately. But when I'm in that mode where I'm not in the bliss and I can't find it, I'm watching it and saying, okay, I know what you're doing. You're challenging me or something. So at least I can step back from it. And now after this morning, I'm feeling it again. So thank you. But I guess is that like a normal contraction and expansion? I've heard you say in some of your other videos. So just maybe a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, the moment you experience some peace or joy, authentic joy, or a deeper silence, love, the moment you touch upon that to whatever degree we've experienced it, the very next thing that's going to happen is your desire is going to expand, isn't it? To want more of that is absolutely natural, and it happens every single time. And this is where life taught me about surrender. I can want what I want without pushing against what is right now. So our life is, in manifestation at least, is about expansion. It expands with and through our desires. Our desire for more peace is really the one being wanting to be more conscious of itself. And as you feel that, that desire expands, and we want it even more than we did before. And if we have any ideas that are in the way of that, we will feel some negative emotion with that. So how that plays out is I meditate and I feel I get a deeper state than I've ever been in. I'm really quite excited as I get up to go about the rest of my day. I feel like I'm getting somewhere. And then somebody says something to me that seems to trigger some kind of negative emotion. And what this is really showing me is that my desire for more peace more of the time is being challenged because I don't really feel I can get it. This person that said something to me is reminding me that actually deep down, I still don't feel worthy of that somehow. So it's totally natural, isn't it? The desire, it's all we want in the end, completely. Does that help to?
Yeah, it does. It's just, I guess it's noticing those things and not letting it, get you off course. That just soldier through, right? And it will change.
Yep. And most importantly for me was how am I holding those when they happen? So come out of meditation, I feel amazing. Go into the rest of my day, something happens. Am I saying, okay, this thing's happened because I'm failing? Or am I saying, this thing's happening to show me what else I can let go of in order to allow this peace to come more often, to stay longer, to be deeper? So absolutely key for me was to recognize that this thing is happening I don't like, having an argument with someone or some negative emotion, or just in this example, it could be anything. And that's not a failure in my awakening and my efforts. That's actually a sign that I'm becoming more conscious to what's holding me back from constant peace. So how you hold that in that moment is key. It doesn't mean you have to like it. You're never going to like feeling contracted or shameful or fearful or something like that, are you?
Wow, so helpful. Thank you so much, Helen.
That one thing you just brought up right there is huge, isn't it? Huge.
Huge. Thank you.
Talk to you. Thank you. Okay. Would anyone else like to ask or share something before we finish today? Claire Bear?
Thanks, Helen. You know when you don't want to put your hand up?
And it happens anyway.
It was more of a share, really, because it's like the surrender and things. Yesterday, I was with some friends yesterday. We were doing some stuff, and everybody was really excited and joyful about what we were doing. And I was really fearful and anxious. And a lot of tears came up. But that was okay. But mind had the story that I should feel like they should feel, that I should be the same as them. And
there's a huge expectation, isn't it? Opposition to how you are in this moment, or how you were then.
Yeah. Mind even had a story, because I was going home at the time and I was quite tearful, leaking. And mind had the story like, well, you can't stop at the shop on your way home because you're crying. So mine was really having a bit of a party in there, really. By the time would be, the tears came, and by the time I got to the shop, it stopped, and I could do the bit of shopping I needed to do, and I could get home and I could look at it and I could say, you know, look at the, and it was just fear and anxiety that was coming up. But in that time, you feel like, you should feel like everybody else. But I've always, it's been hard for me to accept, rather than, you know, that that's how I feel, rather than expect to feel like somebody else in that point. Found that on retreat as well, that as soon as you stop and expecting things, things happened or changed.
Yeah, very quickly something turns around, doesn't it? But it helps to remember that if I'm looking at a being, or an awakened being, or anyone that's experiencing what they want and feeling good about it, it doesn't mean that they've always been that way. I remember the first time I got a major thing that I'd wanted for so long, I was terrified. It actually brought up a lot of fear, getting what I want. And I'm, look, this is insanity. This is what I've been wanting for so long. And I'm like terrified.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up walking around Sainsbury's, the supermarket here in the UK. And I didn't realize I was still crying. And I must have looked like some crazy woman, Somebody stopped me and asked me if I was all right. And then I realized I was actually still crying. It was really weird, but I had to, it brought up this thing again here, my expectations about being able to cry in public, so it was a good exercise, not pleasant, but good. So just noticing that those beings that are really happy and able to accept and receive what they want have been right where I am in this moment, feeling terrified about it because we feel we'll screw it up, or it'll get taken away, or I don't deserve it, or something like that, or there's something in the way of me enjoying it. You only tend to see them when they've worked through all of that stuff and they're just like, wow, this is really exciting, or whatever they're doing. Yeah. Mind just conveniently forgets that person has been right where you are right now, not being able to accept the good things that come to us when we stop resisting.
Yeah.
Because he wants to make a problem out of everything, right? Finally, you stop resisting what is, something wonderful shows up, and it'll disappear. It's looking for some narrative about something to diminish the joy, or some way.
Mind can't accept how life changes, can it?
Yeah, and don't for a second think that my mind accepts life like being really, really good. It still has its. If I really listened, it would still be saying it's not going to last. You don't deserve it, or whatever it says. It has a, it's party lines, party for one in my head, It's just, I know that it's not true. I know that deep enough now that it doesn't really bother me when it says that. And it doesn't really say that very much at all now.
Hopefully it'll quieten down a bit more.
Yeah, and just being gentle with yourself. It's okay that I'm noticing that I can't accept this very well right now. And I'm looking forward to when I can. It's okay where I'm at right now. But here's the acceptance we were talking about at the beginning of Satsang, isn't it? I am where I am right now. I'm looking forward to when it'll be nice when I can just get really excited about something.
Yeah.
But right now, something's coming up for me to look at. Doesn't mean I'm failing. Doesn't mean I'm going backwards. It's just life working with me, through me, to give me more of what I will enjoy. Very brave sharing.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. Anyone else like to share anything? Ask a question or celebrate something? Or are we all done for today? Saima, whenever you're ready.
Hello, Helen.
Hiya.
It's been a lucky week, having opportunities to meditate more often, and just trying to follow the instructions that you gave me last time. And I've been very surprised by what's been coming up now, which is discomfort with compliments. Like that was the last thing. I was like, oh, I'm working on finding those spaces where I can just be, and I loved the meditation you took us through of like, this is just to help you see the contrast. I don't know why those words were really like what finally helped me to realize. I mean, you always feel that like this is finally it.
now I've got it. Now this time, yeah.
But yeah, so I'm having that like with that like right now, which is like, oh, it's just the contrast is showing itself, and I've been finding it very comfortable to get with. But then now it's like when people compliment me. Yesterday I was in a meeting and someone was like, an older lady like in her 60s, and she's like, to see such a young person in so much peace and self understanding and so comfortable in herself, like it's so inspiring to me. Like it went really quite right there, which is like, no, I'm not that. Helen is like, people like, like people I know.
Are you looking at the right person? You can't be talking to me. Yeah.
I was so surprised at like the big reaction I had, which was like, no, like that is not me. And I just lost it. I'm sure she was like, what happened? How did she go from that to this? Like, I just was like, no, let me correct you right there.
I was comfortable with myself until you said that. Yeah. But it's good to notice, isn't it? And it's really one of the most challenging things for anyone. For a long time, I couldn't accept a compliment. It just made me feel so outrageously uncomfortable, whether it's about my teaching, my body, my house, anything. It could be anything at all, new hairdo or anything. It could be what you wear in that day, or whatever it is. I noticed this immediate squirming going on inside, and real wanting to run away from what was going on, from where I was in that moment. And you can probably sense yourself, it's just some remnants of unworthiness, isn't it? That I can still delude myself that I'm not where my favorite awakened being is, until someone points it out that I am living like that, as this person did for you. And I have to somehow, it was hardest for me, I might have said before, probably have many times, but somebody else had to point out to me that I was actually really not suffering anymore and living in deep peace. It was astonishing that I didn't want to see that still. Even at that point, I still didn't want to see it, because it would argue with my unworthiness that I don't deserve awakening. Can you get a sense of it?
Yeah. But I don't know. I guess it's an iceberg, and I can't expect to always figure it out immediately. I don't know what to do with this one.
But just noticing that reaction and looking at it like we've done, again, holding it as something positive. It feels terrible, but it's good that I'm seeing, it's evidence of my deepening of my awakening. I can see clearer now where I'm not able to live in peace, or where I'm holding some idea. And looking at what is it that mindset is so terrible if you were to admit that you're already living a very awakened life like me. What is so bad about that? Mind is like, at all costs, don't admit this to yourself or anyone else. That's its mantra, isn't it? So just gently asking, what would be so bad if I wasn't already living the life that I'm wanting to live? And why can't I admit that? And for me, it came down to some feeling that I would be arrogant to say that, or unworthiness, probably the same thing, really, that I should still never admit that I'm perfect, so to speak. But perfection is ever evolving. Perfect and even more perfect and even more perfect. Perfect right now because you are already the self. It's really, all that's changing is how much you're accepting that, isn't it? That's the only thing awakening is, really. And does it really make any sense that if you follow the teaching and apply it, that if it's worked for everyone else, that it's not going to work for you? And I had to really look at my own willingness to accept it might have already worked in a way that I didn't really want to see. You know, just sort of sitting with that for a few days. And because life's going to point it out to you anyway, like this lady did, we might as well admit it to ourselves. We're so good at admitting our perceived failures in the pathway, but not really so good yet at admitting our successes. I mean, when was the last time you told someone, you know, outside of satsang, that you're really feeling much more peace all the time now? Probably never.
No.
And there's no blame, just sort of saying, we don't want to accept that, do we? We don't want to, and just gently looking at why not. You know, sitting with a cuppa and a pen and paper and jotting down whatever comes up. Why don't I really want to go there? What would it mean? Yeah, it's quite surprising for me when I looked at this.
The story that is coming now is like, this is so heavy. Like I can feel like a pain in my stomach, and it's like, this is it. This is the big one that we won't be able to get over. Like, this is the iron wall.
And you know, this iron wall is in the middle of an infinite field, and you're all around and inside the wall looking. You're not one side of that wall trying to get over it or around it. It's important to remember that. Just zooming out and seeing, this is just an idea in the mind. I've never managed to get my mind to accept that I might have already transcended my mind, or whatever you want to call it. I've never got my mind to stop feeling unworthy, as I was saying before. It just was less and less relevant when I saw my life began to reflect back to me, that it was happening anyway, peace was happening anyway, and that my mind was never gonna change its mind about this. And I didn't need it to in the end. There's this expectation, isn't there? And this is really important. I'm so glad you brought this up, that at some point my mind is going to agree that, yes, I am awakened now, or awakening significantly. And it never will. But it will move from being a big shouting, booming voice to just somebody whispering in the corner. You what? You know, I can't really hear you. Because life will begin to show you again and again, more and more things like happened yesterday. Good things coming to you without you working for it, deserving it, earning it, all of that stuff. Feeling the way you want to feel more and more anyway, despite mind's ideas about, you see, if mind can keep you feeling unworthy, then it can keep talking to itself, can't it? And if it can keep you feeling unworthy, you don't have to, you can't actually admit in that moment that you might be where you want to be. So admitting that you are already where you want to be and who you want to be, that you like yourself, doesn't mean your body and mind and relationships and all that aren't going to keep improving. They will, in fact, even more so. Faster that way. You've probably noticed that already.
Yeah, one of the biggest changes now is that someone was sharing about something about the peace that comes and leaves. Like right now, that does not bother me at all. Like it's not very long ago when it would be great when it came, but it would be terrible when it left. Like, oh, I did something wrong or whatever. But now I'm just in a place of expectation. Yeah, like I know it's part of me. It's part of my existence. Maybe it's not consistent as someone who's had that realization longer, but it's also but I feel like it's just something that's developing and it's here. I don't fear it leaving.
And do you realize how spiritually advanced that is, to not argue when something changes? That's exactly what we're talking about here today. And all of us will have these little victories here that we won't have celebrated, we won't have noticed or recognized deeply enough. I remember the very first time I didn't have enough money. I had that happen so many times, hundreds of thousands of times over my life. And then the very first time it happened, and there wasn't this gut-wrenching, paralyzing fear that came with it. There was just, oh, well, this is how it is. We'll wing it, we'll get through somehow. And mind immediately said, yeah, but the fear will come back. There was nothing within me at that moment that wanted to stop and celebrate. So our focus is where mind takes us here still. To kind of want to keep traveling, but can I just celebrate the thing that's happening significantly here for me spiritually? And we can all celebrate the fact that we're even here listening to this, because this is very advanced, simple but advanced.
It is true. I remember the first time someone recommended your teaching, I was like, I mean, I get it, but she's just so plain. I can't.
Nothing special, yeah. And
I can't concentrate long enough and stuff and all that. And it was just like so hard. But now I'm like, it's like, it's like water fish to water. It's like I can, it's enjoyable. It fills me up. But yeah.
And I can lovingly, gently see a place, a point in my life when I'll feel this way all the time. Even if some negative emotions come up inside that, it's fine. And I can accept that I'm not feeling that peace unbroken and constant and effortless right now, but it's coming. And I can gently encourage that, can celebrate the times more. So it's just, here's one of the last places that mind holds on. It just refuses to see the awakening is deeply, deeply happening. And people around me at the time had to tell me, you're really not suffering anymore with anything. And I was like, really? Because I just didn't want to see it. I had to really stop and look and, oh my goodness, this thing that I'm still heading towards with all of my energy and effort and attention and focus, the whole point of my life, has already happened. And I was so unwilling to see that. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? That you wouldn't actually know when it's happened. But nonetheless, there it was.
Yes, I appreciate it. This is what I was asking for. Like right now, it's coming to me. It's like, this is what I was asking for, to see these blocks, these blockages. It's just hard when it's happening for the first time. Yeah. Like they're all different. And then you're like, oh, I finally got this one. And then like a new thing comes and it takes over everything. And yeah.
And this is a big one, really. Mind is right in that way, isn't it? Because when I can begin to celebrate where I'm already at, it just speeds up completely. And here is one area where we still tend to be looking to the future. So you couldn't accept a compliment yesterday. Okay, it's just showing you where you can love yourself a bit more. Doesn't mean anything's wrong at all. It's just, here's where love wants to emerge a bit more, isn't it? That's really what it comes down to. Mind wants to make it into a whole huge, epic iron wall, that you've got to try to climb over. But you can just go, I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want to do that to myself. I'm not going to do that to myself.
The reason I brought it, it's been in my mind, is because it felt like this is the thing that's the universe or whatever is showing me, because it happened in the morning, it happened again in the evening, and I just kept reacting the same way to different people, same compliment about growth and and peace and whatever, and I just reacted at them both the same way. And I was like, oh, this is the thing now to look at. And I didn't even know there was a satsang today. So I'm so
Perfect.
grateful.
It's not arrogant to admit that you are the self and to enjoy feeling peace. It's only the truth, isn't it? It's only the truth. And some corner of our consciousness may never feel comfortable admitting that. It's okay. It's really okay. We don't need that bit to change our mind. We don't need it to change. It can do its thing in the corner and we can just be peaceful anyway. And, you know, maybe that small corner of our consciousness is what keeps us in humility rather than, you know, arrogance or whatever, who knows, but we don't need it to disappear before we can really enjoy life.
Oh, thank you.
It's never going to change its mind anyway, I'll tell you that right now. Never.
I appreciate your practical advice, and I feel held. Like maybe it doesn't have to be permanent or whatever, but I feel held to grow and be as big, make as much errors or whatever, and it's like there's a place to trust that it won't be encouraged to go overboard, or you know, vice versa, whatever that is. And I appreciate that.
That's the power of a loving community of awakening beings, isn't it? That we can love and support and encourage each other, because we don't get that anywhere else really. In our life, usually it's the opposite. So wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so we leave it there for today. Seems like a good place to leave it. Thank you all for your wonderfully brave sharing and questions, and for being present here with me today. Appreciate it. Thank you. Namaste.